In today's Money Watch, a federal agency is investigating reports of engine failures involving more than 1 million older Honda and Acura vehicles.
When one company has engine trouble, that is a bad design. When General Motors, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai all start getting tied to serious failures, that is a warning sign. Because now you are not looking at one mistake, you are looking at a whole industry pushing engines harder than they were ever meant to be pushed. Smaller designs, more heat, more pressure, more systems stacked on top of each other, less room for anything to go wrong. That is why these failures feel so sudden now, and why the repair bills hit so hard. The badges are different, but the deeper cause is starting to look very familiar. And once you see what changed, these failures stop looking like bad luck and start looking like something much bigger. Built to break. Most engine disasters do not start where people think they do. They think one company got cheap, one engineer made a bad call, or one factory had a serious mistake. Sometimes that is true, but most of the time, the bigger story starts earlier than that. It starts with the pressure the whole industry has been under for years. Every company was told to build engines that used less fuel, made fewer emissions, felt stronger, weighed less, fit in smaller spaces, and still lasted a long time. On paper, that sounds like progress. Most people want a vehicle that saves fuel. Most people want something that feels quick and smooth. Most people also want something they can trust for years. The problem is that all those goals do not always work together nicely. At some point, the engine starts getting squeezed from every direction. The old way was simpler. Bigger engines, fewer complicated systems, fewer parts trying to do 3 jobs at once, and more room for heat and wear. Those engines were not perfect. Some were rough, some were thirsty, some leaked, some were outdated even when they were new, but a lot of them had something many modern engines do not have anymore. They had margin, they had breathing room, they could take some abuse and keep going. That matters because real life is messy. People miss an oil change. People tow more than they should. People drive short trips every day. People idle in traffic. People buy whatever oil is on sale. People do not always warm the engine up gently. People do not always catch the first little warning sign. Older engines often had more patience for that. Newer engines often do not. That is where the real shift happened. Instead of building engines with extra room, companies started building engines that had to work harder. Smaller size, more power, tighter spaces, more heat, more pressure, and more systems controlling everything. Turbochargers helped make smaller engines feel bigger. Direct injection helped improve fuel use and power. Cylinder shutoff systems helped save fuel in bigger engines. Thinner oils helped reduce drag. Software kept managing more and more of what used to be mechanical and simple. None of those ideas are automatically bad. Some of them work well. Some of them really do help. But every time you add more complexity, you also add more ways for things to go wrong. And when the engine already has less margin than before, one small problem can turn into a major repair much faster than it used to. That is why so many modern failures feel so sudden now, and why the repair bills hit so hard. The badges are different, but the deeper cause is starting to look very familiar. And once you see what changed, these failures stop looking like bad luck and start looking like something much bigger. So before we even get to any brand name, that is the first thing to understand. The real cause behind a lot of modern engine trouble is not only one bad design, it is the whole industry chasing power, fuel economy, emissions, and packaging all at once. Once you understand that, the brand stories start making a lot more sense, and one company shows that problem very clearly. If this sounds familiar, leave a like and tell me in the comments what engine made you lose trust first. A lot of drivers have already figured this out the hard way, and chances are you have seen it too. GM on the edge. When people talk about modern engine trouble, General Motors comes up fast, and there is a reason for that. This is one of the clearest examples of what happens when an engine is asked to do too much while depending on systems that have very little room to fail. The easiest place to start is with the fuel-saving hardware built into some of the larger engines. The idea sounds smart enough. When full power is not needed, some cylinders shut off for a while to save fuel. Then they come back when you need them again.
In a brochure, that sounds like exactly the kind of clever solution modern buyers want: better mileage without giving up the feel of a larger engine. The problem is that the real world is not a brochure. To make a system like that work, the engine needs extra hardware, extra oil control, extra moving parts, and very exact operation inside the valve train. Once something small starts going wrong in that chain, it can get expensive fast. That is why lifter problems became such a big talking point. Once people started hearing about ticking, misfires, bent pushrods, and torn-down engines, the idea stopped sounding clever and started sounding risky. That does not mean every engine with that system will fail. It does mean the system reduced confidence. A lot of owners began asking the same question: was the small fuel saving really worth the chance of a repair that could take the engine apart? That is not a crazy question. It's the kind of question more people should ask before they get too impressed by technology that sounds good on paper. Then there is the other side of the General Motors story, and in some ways it is even more important. It was not just complexity, it was also the fear of serious internal damage. Once stories start spreading about deep engine problems tied to parts inside the lower end, people stop thinking in terms of annoying repairs. They start thinking about total failure. They start thinking about being stranded, losing value, or facing an engine replacement in a vehicle that should still feel new. That is what makes this such a useful example. It shows both sides of the modern problem at once. On one side, you have clever systems added for efficiency. On the other side, you have the danger of tight tolerances and very high consequences when something deep inside goes wrong. Put those together, and people stop feeling like they own something solid. They feel like they are driving something impressive but fragile. That is a big change from the way trucks and larger sport utility vehicles used to be understood. People used to expect those machines to feel overbuilt, maybe not refined, maybe not efficient,
But solid, hard to kill, easy to trust. Once that feeling disappears, the whole relationship changes. Even a smooth, powerful vehicle starts to feel uncertain if the engine has a reputation for expensive surprises. General Motors did not invent this modern problem, but it helped make it easy to see. The company showed how quickly a strong engine can lose trust when efficiency systems, internal wear concerns, and very expensive repairs start appearing in the same conversation. And once that happened, people started looking at other brands differently too, because if the problem was only living there, the answer would be easy. But it was not. Even the safe brands. For many people, the safe answer used to be simple. If one company had engine trouble, just go to a brand with a better reputation. That logic used to work more often than it does now, and that is why Toyota and Honda matter so much in this story. They changed the conversation because they showed that even careful brands are not protected from modern pressure. For years, Toyota built a reputation around calm, steady engineering. It was the company a lot of people trusted when they wanted fewer surprises. That kind of trust does not happen by accident. It's built over a long time. So when serious engine trouble starts showing up around a company like that, it gets attention very quickly. Not because every Toyota engine is bad, but because people expect Toyota to stay away from the kinds of mistakes other companies make. That's why recent problems hit so hard. They made people stop and ask a question they were not used to asking. If even this company can have major trouble with a modern engine, then what exactly has changed in the industry? That question matters. It moves the conversation away from blind loyalty and toward the real issue underneath, which is that tighter modern engines can be badly hurt by contamination, weak manufacturing, or stress in ways older designs often handled better. Honda tells a similar story, but from a slightly different direction. Honda spent years earning a name for engines that felt simple, efficient, and durable. Many people still carry that old picture in their heads, but once the market started pushing harder towards smaller turbocharged engines and more exact engineering, Honda was pulled into the same world everyone else was facing. Oil dilution concerns, bearing trouble, and other engine questions reminded people that a good history does not give a company immunity forever. This is where a lot of people still get stuck. They think a brand's past tells them everything they need to know about its current engines, but that's not how this works anymore.
A great company can still make one engine family that has real risk. A company with some weak years can still make a good one. The badge still matters, but the design matters more than most people realize. That's why modern shopping needs a different mindset. Instead of asking only who built it, you have to ask what kind of engine it is, how stressed it is, how complicated it is, and whether it has already shown signs of trouble in the real world. That's a harder way to shop, but it's a smarter way too. Toyota and Honda matter here because they removed the easy escape route. Once even the trusted names started facing engine questions, people could no longer act like this was only a problem for reckless companies or badly run factories. It became much clearer that the whole industry had moved into a riskier era. And when that risk becomes big enough, it can do more than hurt an engine. It can damage the whole name on the hood.
When trust collapsed. There's a big difference between a few engine complaints and a full trust problem. Some issues stay technical. They stay in service departments, repair forums, and conversations between mechanics. Others become something much bigger. They become part of how regular people talk about a brand. That is where Hyundai became such an important example. What made the Hyundai story so damaging was not only that engines failed, it was the scale of the fear around them. Once enough owners start talking about bearing wear, knocking, stalling, seizure, engine replacement, and long warranty fights, the problem changes shape. It is no longer just a technical defect, it becomes a reputation issue that follows the brand everywhere. That is what engine problems do when they reach a certain size. A screen problem is annoying, a trim issue is annoying, even a rough transmission can sometimes stay in its own lane. But the engine is different. Once people stop trusting the engine, they start questioning the whole vehicle. They start listening for sounds that may not even be there. They start wondering if the next light on the dash is small or serious. They start thinking about resale, repair costs, and whether they should get rid of the vehicle before something worse happens. That is powerful, because trust is one of the biggest things a car company sells. Most people are not engineers. They do not buy vehicles by studying bearing design, oil flow, or machining quality. They buy based on trust. If that trust breaks, it is very hard to repair. You can replace an engine, you can extend a warranty, you can update software, but once people start telling their friends and family not to trust a brand, that damage lasts a long time. Hyundai matters in this story because it shows what happens when the margin gets too small and the public can feel it. Once an engine family earns a reputation for serious failure, the company no longer controls the conversation. Owners do, mechanics do, used car buyers do, and they often remember problems much longer than manufacturers want them to. But the biggest lesson is still not only about one brand. The deeper lesson is that when engines are built closer to the edge, weak points stop staying small. A problem that might have been manageable in a bigger, simpler, less stressed engine can become disastrous in a newer one that depends on everything going exactly right. That is the heart of this whole topic. Less margin means more risk. More risk means bigger consequences, and bigger consequences turn ordinary defects into stories people remember for years. Once you see that, the next question becomes the most useful one of all. Buy smarter now. The point of a video like this should not be to scare people and leave them there. It should give them something useful. So here's the real takeaway. Stop buying a vehicle as if the badge alone tells the whole story. That shortcut is weaker now than it used to be. The smarter move is to think about the engine first, not just the power number, not just the fuel economy number, not just how smooth it feels on a test drive. Think about the design. Is it a small engine being pushed very hard? Is it packed with systems that all need to work perfectly together? Is it already known for lifter trouble, bearing wear, oil use, timing issues, contamination, or overheating? Has it been on the road long enough for real patterns to show up? Or is it still new enough that the bigger stories may be hiding for now? That kind of thinking matters because modern engines can feel wonderful in the first few years. Quiet, fast, smooth, efficient. But those first years do not always tell you how the engine will age. Some designs stay solid. Others start showing their weakness later when the warranty fades and the repair bill becomes the owner's problem. The other thing to look for is forgiveness. That word keeps coming up because it may be the most important one in this whole script. A good engine is not just one that performs well under perfect conditions. A good engine is one that survives ordinary life. It survives missed maintenance once in a while. It survives hot weather, short trips, cold starts, heavy loads, and owners who are normal instead of perfect. That is why older engines still earn respect even when they are less efficient and less advanced. They may not be impressive on paper, but they often know how to survive. This is also why many people still keep older trucks and older sport utility vehicles longer than they used to. It is not always because they hate technology. Sometimes it is because they trust simplicity. They trust an engine with fewer complicated systems and more room for wear. They trust something that gives them warning before failure. They trust something that a local mechanic understands without needing half the vehicle controlled by software. That does not mean you have to run out and buy an old machine tomorrow. It means you should stop treating new technology like a free upgrade. Sometimes it is an upgrade. Sometimes it is a trade. Better fuel economy traded for less durability margin. More power traded for more heat and more stress. Better emissions numbers traded for more complexity. If you do not understand the trade, you can end up paying for it later. So the real lesson is simple. Study the engine family. Look at the repair pattern. Learn what problems repeat. Do not trust reputation by itself. Trust proven design, real-world history, and how much room the engine seems to have when life is not perfect. And all of that leads to the real answer behind the title. The real culprit. The real cause behind the engine disasters at General Motors, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai is not one secret problem hiding inside all of them. It is something simpler and bigger at the same time. The whole industry kept pushing engines to do more while giving them less room to do it safely over the long haul. More power from less size, better fuel economy from harder working hardware, lower emissions through tighter control, more smoothness, more refinement, more marketing appeal, more packaging efficiency, and more pressure to keep all of that working at once. That is the real cause, not one magic defect, not one lazy engineer, not one reckless brand, a whole design era built around tighter margins. Once that happens, different companies can fail in different ways while still sharing the same deeper problem. One brand gets hit by lifter trouble, another by contamination or manufacturing defects, another by bearing wear, another by oil dilution or internal stress. The details are different, but the pattern underneath feels familiar because the engine is living with less forgiveness than the older designs many people still remember. That is why this subject matters. It is not really about picking a winner and a loser between brands. It is about understanding what changed in the way modern engines are built. The old assumption used to be that if you picked the right company, you were safe. That is no longer enough. Today, the smarter question is whether the engine itself was built to survive real life.
If it has a proven history, enough margin, fewer stacked risks, and a reputation for aging well, that matters more than a shiny badge and a nice sales pitch. If it is new, heavily stressed, full of exact systems, and already showing warning signs in the real world, that matters too. The truth is not always exciting, but it can save a lot of money. A vehicle can look modern, sound refined, and still be hiding an engine that has less patience for ordinary ownership than the old one it replaced. That is the part a lot of people are only now starting to understand. Modern does not always mean stronger, smarter does not always mean tougher, more advanced does not always mean more durable. Sometimes it just means the engine has been pushed closer to the line. And once you know that, you stop shopping the old way. You stop trusting the badge first and the design second. You start asking better questions. What kind of engine is this? What is it known for? How much stress is built into it? How much damage can one weak point do? That is how you protect yourself now. That is how you avoid the expensive surprises. And that is the real answer behind all these engine disasters. One last thing matters here too. None of this means you have to fear every new engine or worship every old one. That would be the wrong lesson. The real lesson is to slow down, ask better questions, and stop assuming modern design always means safer design. Some new engines will prove themselves, some will not, but blind trust is no longer enough. For a long time, people believed the name on the hood told them almost everything they needed to know. That world is changing. The badge still matters, but the engine matters more. If you want to be careful, look past the ad, look past the reputation, and look at the design itself. Ask whether it was built to last, whether it has room for mistakes, and whether real owners are seeing the same trouble again and again. That is the smarter way to buy now. And once you start thinking that way, a lot of these so-called engine disasters stop looking random. They start looking like the same warning told 4 different ways. That is the part too many drivers are learning the hard way. The badge on the hood still matters, but it does not tell the whole story anymore. What matters now is what is happening under it and whether that engine was built to survive real life. If this hit home, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which brand or engine you trust the least right now.